It was an experiment that didn't work as well as they hoped it would work. But it does, even today, provide health care for many, many individuals who would not be able to get it otherwise. So yes, it was an experiment. It didn't work completely like we envisioned it, but it did work and is working today.
And probably one of your biggest chief complaints from the people you served in the 77th District was teen care.
Well,
when you was at home and talking to the community.
That's a lot. Of course, at first, it was a good thing because anybody came to us that had a letter from an insurance agent, we could get them on. Then it went to just the opposite. People began to be dropped off by the droves, and many people who really needed it, were really sick, were dropped off. And that made it even more difficult. So the last few years of dealing with teen care were very difficult.
Can you tell us anything you remember from the Governor McWhorter's administration that sticks with your mind, some of the good things working under Governor McWhorter?
Well, Governor McWhorter was the kind of man that he didn't speak till he thought it through. And many times I've seen people come into his office all tore up about something, and one of the favorite sayings he had that I liked was, "Now boys, let's not get our gown tails over our heads. Let's think about this. Let's figure out a solution. Let's don't knee-jerk. Let's don't just jump into something because it sounds good right now. Let's think about it." So I guess if there's any one thing I learned from Ned McWhorter was to look at the problem, think about it, don't knee-jerk, think it through, and then make a decision after you've had all the facts come in.
And you know, that is good leadership. When you're able to work with somebody who can sit down at the table and look at all aspects of the situation and make the proper decision.
Absolutely.
And it represents your community in the best way possible. Now let's move on to, you was under the Governor Sundquist administration. Can you tell us a little about being under Governor Sundquist and changing from Ned Ray? Could you see the changes or the aspects, how things changed throughout the picture of the administration?
It was a complete turnover when Governor Sundquist came into power. Governor Sundquist is a good man. I don't think he was a very effective governor. I think he just was never able to really get a hold of it. He had never served in the legislature before. He served in Washington, and some of us said he had that Washington mentality. And things don't work in Tennessee like they do in Washington. So Governor Sundquist's administration will not be remembered as a great administration. He was in no way able to accomplish any of the things that Ned Ray McWhorter accomplished, nor Phil Bredesen's accomplishments. I liked Governor Sundquist personally. I thought he was a fine person, but he just never was able to get control and run state government in the manner that it was run under McWhorter or that's being run under Bredesen.
And at the end of Sundquist administration, things are changing, things are taking a different aspect, and we finally get the Democrat leadership as a governor, and Governor Bredesen comes in. Your life was changed a lot through that period.
Governor Bredesen came into office and with a businessman's approach. And one of the things that I really appreciated, he had heard a lot of complaints on the campaign trail about the Tennessee.
Someone to stick to the numbers. You know, the budget is the main thing we have to work off. We're only allowed so much taxes in the state of Tennessee, and you have to take that and go with it.
That's right.
And it affects people when you got to make decisions, what to keep, what to cut, what to expand. You have to look at these programs really impact people's lives and families. And we're talking about an impact. And one thing I can admire you for is you stuck to your guns. One of the hardest decisions in being there in Nashville, you know how it is having protesters and stuff around the Capitol, and you have to have highway patrol and all this. Tell us about the tax deal you went through that time period.
Well, the income tax was a major push by Governor Sundquist, and there was a lot of pros and a lot of cons for an income tax. When I ran the last time, I told the people I would not vote for an income tax. I was going to stand by my guns, which I did. I didn't vote for it. And when Governor Bredesen was running, you know, he said he could run the government without an income tax, and he has been successful in doing that. But it was one of the hard times because there was a lot of pressure on both sides. Much of your education community wanted the income tax. State employees wanted income tax. But the general public did not. They wanted state government to manage with the programs that we had and the tax system we had, which is primarily dependent on the sales tax. And so it was a difficult time, but we came through it, and you know, a lot of people got defeated for voting for the income tax. And it did cause a lot of turmoil in Nashville, but hopefully that's behind them and they can move on now.
And you stuck to your guns, and people respect you for it.
You got to stand by your word.
And throughout your campaigns, every 2 years your re-election come up, and one thing a lot of people would say about PHILLIP Pinion, Representative PHILLIP Pinion, he never said nothing bad about his opponent. He ran a clean race. And that's one thing I like to see today in politics. You know, people is tired of hearing the backbiting, the stabbing, and telling about the other person's dirty laundry. We want to hear what's going to happen to our community. Do you have any aspect on that, how we could change it throughout?
Well, I don't know how you could change it. You know, what happened back in the late 1980s was a new kind of politics came into being, campaigning, and it was about running your opponent down. It was trying to get people to vote against your opponent rather than vote for you. I never said anything harmful against an opponent. In 1988, when Joel Shore and Bill Gray and I ran for this position, we were friends we started, we were friends we ended. And every campaign I had, I never had any problem because I wasn't going to run the other person down. They want to run me down, fine. I'm not going to run them down because, number one, I'm a Christian. I don't think that's the right way to do it. And number two, you're right. People are tired of this negativity. They want to hear what you can do and what you're going to do when you get to national, not all that's wrong with your opponent and why they shouldn't go. And politics today has become so negative, and I hate that. And it's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons, that I decided to retire was that I didn't fit into that kind of politics. I liked being upfront. I wanted to tell people what I was going to do, not what what my opponent couldn't do. And today it seems like more money is spent on negative ads than there are on positive ads, and I don't like that kind of politics.
And it'd be nice to see it change. You know?
It would,
and,
very much so.
Right now we're in such a financial burden on the family and in our society. That's the last thing we need to hear. We need to, you know.
We need positive news, not
positive
negative news. That's right.
Give hope, you know, in a Christian way to lead the family. Say, hey, hope's on its way. This means if you're going to argue through your campaign, you're going to get up there and argue like a kindergarten.
And you debate the issues, but don't debate each other's, and don't bring in families and things like that. That's the sad part. Sad part. We're seeing things today where the opponents send out negative things, even on family members. And that's not the way to campaign. That's not the way it was set up. That's what it was meant.
Let's move on to you being the chairman of transportation. Let's start with East Tennessee. Tell us a little about being the chairman of transportation aspect, what happens in East Tennessee and the Great Smokies and some of the things that goes on there that we don't see here in rural West Tennessee. You know, there's different types of transportation routes there than it is here in West Tennessee. So give us a little aspect on that.
Well, being chairman of the Transportation Committee, you had to remember that you represented the entire state. You know,